My name is Douglas, 36, a software engineer who built everything from nothing after my dad walked out when I was 7. For years I tried rebuilding our relationship, and this Christmas I thought I had the perfect plan. A surprise $8,000 luxury chalet vacation in Lake Tahoe. Everything was set until that phone call came. "You're not invited to Christmas this year," my dad snapped, choosing his girlfriend's ex-husband's yacht instead. I sat there, phone in hand, childhood memories flooding back. Before I continue this story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had family let you down during the holidays. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets rarely stayed secret. My childhood home was a modest 2-story with fading blue paint that my mother Patricia struggled to maintain after my father left. I was only 7 when their marriage crumbled, too young to understand the complexities but old enough to feel the absence. My father Richard packed his bags for California without much explanation. The promise of weekly phone calls quickly dwindled to monthly, then to just major holidays, and eventually they stopped altogether. Birthdays passed without cards. School plays went on without him in the audience. Graduation day came with an empty seat where a proud father should have been. Mom did her best. Patricia worked 2 jobs, days as a receptionist at the local clinic and evenings waiting tables at Malone's diner. Even with her exhaustion, evident in the dark circles under her eyes, she never missed my baseball games or parent-teacher conferences. But money was always tight, the refrigerator sometimes empty by month's end. By 13, I was mowing lawns in summer and shoveling driveways in winter. At 15, I got my working papers and started bagging groceries at Fairway Market after school. My paychecks went straight to Mom for bills, keeping just enough for school lunches and the occasional movie with friends. Computers became my escape. The high school computer lab became my sanctuary during lunch periods. Mrs. Keller, the computer science teacher, noticed my interest and let me stay after hours working on an old donated IBM. I taught myself BASIC, then C++, spending hours debugging code while other kids played video games. When college application time came, I applied to every scholarship available. The state university offered a partial scholarship, enough to cover about 60% of tuition, but nothing for housing or books. I enrolled anyway, determined to make it work. College years meant full-time classes and nearly full-time work. I stocked shelves overnight at a 24-hour supermarket, grabbing sleep between classes in the library. Sometimes I was so tired I would fall asleep sitting up, textbook in hand. But I graduated with my computer science degree, debt minimal compared to my classmates. My first job came at a small Chicago startup, 80-hour weeks for salary barely above minimum wage, but I was in the industry. I shared an apartment with 3 other guys, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, eating ramen most nights, but writing code that mattered. When the company was acquired 2 years later, my stock options paid off just enough to afford a security deposit on my own studio apartment. The next few years saw me climbing the ladder. Better jobs, better pay, better apartments. I moved to San Francisco for an opportunity at a mid-sized tech firm, then leveraged that experience into a senior role at one of the big players. Now I lead a team of 20 engineers building software used by millions. The scared kid from Iowa transformed into someone with financial security and professional respect. 3 years ago, after not hearing from him for nearly a decade, my father reached out through Facebook. His message was casual, as if no time had passed. "Hey son, saw you're doing well in tech. Proud of you." No apology, no explanation for the silence. Just pride in success he had no hand in creating. Something in me still wanted his approval. That wounded 7-year-old boy was still waiting for his dad to come home. So I responded, and we arranged to meet during my next business trip to Los Angeles, where he had settled. That first meeting was awkward beyond words. We sat across from each other at an overpriced restaurant he chose, making small talk, like distant acquaintances. He looked older than his 59 years. His once dark hair, now gray face lined from years of California sun. He told me about his girlfriend Amanda, 20 years his junior, and his job managing a car dealership. He asked about my computer stuff, but glazed over when I explained what I actually did. When the check came, he patted his pockets and mentioned forgetting his wallet. I paid without comment, ignoring the familiar feeling of disappointment. Over the next 3 years, I initiated most of our contact. I called on holidays. I sent birthday gifts. I invited him to visit San Francisco. Sometimes he responded warmly. Sometimes weeks would pass before a one-word text reply. Yet each time we connected, I convinced myself we were making progress. I noticed a pattern. His interest peaked whenever I mentioned work achievements or purchases, my promotion, my condo, my new car. Conversations lasted longer when they centered on my success or potential assistance I could offer. When I tried discussing deeper topics or childhood memories, he became distant or changed the subject. My best friend Jason warned me repeatedly that I was setting myself up for disappointment. "He sees you as an ATM, not a son," he said after my father called asking for a small loan to cover some unexpected expenses. I lent him $3,000 that was never mentioned again, let alone repaid. My therapist, Dr. Melissa, gently suggested I examine what I was really seeking from this relationship and whether my father was capable of providing it. But I dismissed these concerns. I was convinced that with enough effort, enough generosity, I could rebuild the relationship I had always wanted. I believed the right gesture, the perfect moment together, would trigger the father-son connection I had craved since childhood. Christmas seemed like the perfect opportunity to make that happen. If I could just create the right environment, surely he would see me, really see me, and we could start fresh. Despite all evidence to the contrary, I held on to hope. And that hope led me to plan what I thought would be the perfect Christmas reunion. It was during one of our rare phone conversations last summer that I discovered my father's passion for skiing. He mentioned offhandedly that in his younger days he had been quite skilled on the slopes, but hadn't been able to afford a proper ski vacation in years. Something clicked in my mind. Here was my opportunity to create a meaningful experience we could share. The planning began immediately. I spent evenings researching the best ski resorts within driving distance of Los Angeles. Lake Tahoe emerged as the perfect location, prestigious enough to impress him but not so exclusive that we would feel out of place. I wanted somewhere with both challenging slopes for his apparently considerable skills and easier runs where we could ski together. I found the perfect chalet through a luxury rental site, a 4-bedroom mountain lodge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, a stone fireplace, hot tub on the deck, and ski-in, ski-out access to the percent slopes. At $8,000 for 10 days, it was extravagant, but I convinced myself it was worth every penny for the memories we would create. I made the reservation in my father's name, imagining his pride when the staff addressed him as Mr. Henderson at check-in. I paid the deposit and set up the remaining balance to be charged to my credit card 2 weeks before arrival. Everything was arranged so he would feel like the host, not the guest. With accommodation secured, I dove into planning activities. Beyond skiing and snowboarding, I researched local restaurants with the best reviews, scheduling reservations at places featuring his favorite foods. I found a snowmobile tour through pristine backcountry, booked a guided ice fishing experience, and even arranged for private evening snowshoe walks under the stars. Choosing gifts became an obsession. I wanted items that would show thoughtfulness rather than just financial ability. I tracked down a vintage ski poster from the resort he had mentioned visiting as a teenager. I commissioned a local artisan to create custom-engraved wooden ski poles. I found a rare whiskey from the year of his birth. Each gift was wrapped in high-quality paper, with handwritten notes explaining its significance. The food planning was extensive. I contacted the property manager to ensure the kitchen would be stocked with all his favorites. The specific brand of coffee he mentioned, liking the particular type of sourdough bread he once said, reminded him of his mother's baking. The craft beer from a small California brewery he had praised. For Christmas dinner itself, I hired a private chef to prepare a traditional feast with all the trimmings. When my father mentioned that his girlfriend Amanda enjoyed winter sports too, I immediately extended the invitation to include her. I adjusted the reservations, added her to the planned activities, and even purchased additional gifts I thought she might appreciate based on the little I knew about her preferences. Taking the time off work proved challenging. My team was in the final stages of a major project, and my absence would put additional pressure on everyone. But I negotiated with my director, promising to be available for emergency consults and working extra hours in the weeks leading up to the holiday to ensure everything was on track before my departure. Dr. Melissa raised her eyebrows during our session when I detailed the elaborate plans. That sounds incredibly generous, Douglas. I wonder if you've considered what expectations you're placing on this experience, and how you'll feel if it doesn't meet those expectations. I dismissed her concerns with practiced ease. It's just a nice vacation. I can afford it, and it will be good for us to spend quality time together. $8,000 is quite an investment for just a nice vacation, she observed. What are you hoping will happen during this trip? I struggled to articulate it then. But looking back, I was hoping for a movie script transformation, that against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains and festive decorations, my father would suddenly become the dad I had always wanted, that the magic of Christmas would somehow heal 3 decades of absence and disappointment. Jason was less diplomatic when I shared the details over beers. You're setting yourself up for a massive letdown, man. Has he ever once put this kind of effort into your relationship? Has he ever even paid for dinner? People change, I insisted. Maybe he just needs to see that I really care. You've been showing him you care for years, Jason countered. Has he noticed yet? I changed the subject, unwilling to let anything dampen my enthusiasm. The plans were in motion, and I was committed to making this work. As November turned to December, my excitement grew. I created a digital invitation with photos of the chalet, the slopes, and the surrounding area, complete with an itinerary of our planned activities. I sent it to my father with a note, expressing how much I was looking forward to spending the holidays together. His response was encouragingly enthusiastic. Looks amazing. Can't wait. It was the most positive reaction I had received from him in recent memory, fueling my conviction that I had finally found the way to connect with him. I booked my flights, arriving a day early to prepare the chalet before welcoming him and Amanda. I arranged for a car service to pick them up from their home and transport them to Lake Tahoe in comfort. Every detail was considered, every potential obstacle anticipated and removed. As the countdown to Christmas began, I found myself checking the long-range weather forecast for Lake Tahoe multiple times daily, hoping for perfect snow conditions. I revisited the itinerary, making small adjustments to ensure the perfect balance of activity and relaxation. I imagined conversations we might have by the fireplace, visualized teaching him about the latest ski equipment, pictured us toasting with expensive cognac as we gazed at the star-filled mountain sky. With 1 week to go, everything was perfect. The final payment for the chalet had been processed. The gifts were wrapped and shipped to arrive ahead of me. The chef had confirmed the menu. The weather forecast promised fresh powder. All that remained was to pack my bags and board my flight. Then came the phone call that would change everything. The call came on a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week before Christmas. I was working late, finalizing details for the handover of my work responsibilities, when my phone lit up with my father's name. Assuming he was calling with questions about the trip, I answered with cheerful anticipation. Hey, Dad, I was just thinking about you. Got your skis waxed and ready. There was a slight pause, and immediately I sensed something was off. His "Hey, Douglas" lacked the enthusiasm I had been hearing in our recent conversations about the trip. We exchanged awkward small talk. His comments about the unusually warm Los Angeles weather, my updates about the predicted snowfall in Tahoe. The conversation felt forced, like we were strangers making obligatory chit-chat. Then he cleared his throat, in that way people do before delivering unwelcome news. So about Christmas. Amanda and I have made other plans. I felt a slight chill run through me, but kept my tone light. What do you mean the chalet is all set? I sent you the confirmation last week. Yeah, I got that, but something better came up, he said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. Amanda's ex-husband. They're still on good terms. He invited us to spend the holidays on his yacht in the Caribbean. 5-star treatment, all the way. I struggled to process what I was hearing, but we've been planning this for months. Everything's paid for, reserved. Look, Douglas, he interrupted, irritation now evident in his voice. You're not getting it. You're not invited to Christmas this year. We want to do our own thing. The bluntness of his statement hit me like a physical blow. I sat down heavily in my office chair, trying to maintain composure. I don't understand, I managed. The whole point was for us to spend time together. It's been years since we've had a proper Christmas. That's the problem right there, he cut in. You're too needy. Always have been. Even as a kid, always wanting attention. Amanda says I need to set better boundaries. I almost laughed at the irony. My father, who had abandoned his parental responsibilities decades ago, lecturing me about boundaries based on advice from his girlfriend of 2 years. Dad, this isn't about being needy. It's about trying to build a relationship. I thought that's what you wanted too when you reached out to me. Sure, a relationship is fine, but this is a no-brainer. A yacht in the Caribbean versus some cabin in the snow. Come on. It's not just some cabin, I said, hearing the hurt in my own voice. It's a luxury chalet I booked especially for you. I hired a private chef. I planned activities I thought you'd enjoy. Well, you should have checked with me before making all these plans, he replied somehow, turning his rejection into my fault. Anyway, Amanda's already bought new swimsuits. We're leaving Sunday. I put this on my credit card, I said quietly. $8,000. There was a pause, and for a moment I thought perhaps this financial reality might change his mind. Instead, he said, well, you're the big tech success, right? You can afford it. Maybe you can get a refund or something. The conversation deteriorated further. When I tried once more to express my disappointment, he accused me of emotional manipulation and being too sensitive. When I mentioned the non-refundable reservations and the time I had taken off work, he suggested I find a buddy to go with since I was so desperate not to be alone for Christmas. The call ended abruptly when he said he had to go. Amanda was waiting for him to take her to dinner. We'll catch up in the new year, he said, as if he had just declined a casual coffee invitation rather than shattered holiday plans, and with them my hopes for our relationship. After hanging up, I sat motionless in my darkened office, the only light coming from my computer screen. The silence was overwhelming. I felt physically ill. A knot in my stomach, tightness in my chest, a dull ringing in my ears. As the initial shock subsided, memories flooded back unbidden. My 8th birthday waiting by the window for a father who never showed. 12 years old. The science fair where I won first place scanning the audience for a face that wasn't there. 16 getting my driver's license, and having no one to share the milestone with, except my exhausted mother. College graduation, the empty chair I had saved just in case. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason checking in about an unrelated matter. Instead of responding, I called him. He bailed, I said when he answered, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Jason didn't need clarification. I'm coming over. Have you eaten? I'll bring food. 40 minutes later, we sat in my living room, Thai takeout containers spread before us, though I had no appetite. As I recounted the conversation, Jason's expression shifted from concern to outrage. What a selfish piece of he started, then caught himself. Sorry. I know he's your dad, but this is exactly what I was worried about. You were right, I admitted, the words bitter in my mouth. I built this up in my head, thinking one big gesture would change everything. It's not your fault, Jason insisted. Normal parents don't bail on their kids for a yacht trip. Normal parents don't make their children feel like burdens for wanting a relationship. Part of me still wanted to defend my father, to find excuses for his behavior. Maybe Amanda pressured him. Maybe he felt overwhelmed by all the plans I made. Jason just looked at me, his silence more effective than any argument. Eventually he said, You know that's not it. That night after Jason left, I barely slept. I lay awake replaying not just the phone call, but years of similar disappointments. The unanswered messages, the forgotten promises, the consistent prioritization of his needs above all else. For the first time, I allowed myself to see the pattern without making excuses for it. By morning, the hurt had begun to transform into something else. Anger. Not the hot, reactive kind that leads to regrettable decisions, but a cool, clarifying anger that finally allowed me to see the situation for what it was. I had been chasing a relationship with someone who had no interest in being caught. The morning after my father's call, I woke with an unexpected sense of clarity. The fog of denial that had clouded my judgment for years seemed to have lifted overnight. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen island, opening my laptop with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. My weekly therapy session with Dr. Melissa was scheduled for that afternoon. Usually I spent our sessions analyzing my father's behavior, seeking ways to better connect with him. This time was different. I think I've been complicit in my own disappointment, I told her. I've been allowing this pattern to continue by always being the one to reach out to plan, to forgive, without any acknowledgement of the hurt. Dr. Melissa nodded, careful not to seem too eager about this breakthrough. What do you think maintaining this pattern has been costing you? I considered the question: peace of mind, self-respect, genuine connections with people who actually want to be in my life, time and energy that could be invested elsewhere. I paused. And about $8,000 apparently. And what would it look like to stop maintaining this pattern? I think it starts with this Christmas situation, I replied. I need to stop pretending this is a balanced relationship where both people are making an effort. After our session, I logged into the booking system for the chalet. What I discovered there added insult to injury. My father had already shared the reservation details, which were in his name, with several friends. According to messages in the booking system's chat feature, he had told them he was treating everyone to a ski vacation. He had even requested additional housekeeping services and premium liquor packages to be added to my bill. The revelation was like a bucket of ice water, shocking but ultimately clarifying. This wasn't just about choosing a yacht over a chalet. This was about taking advantage of my generosity while giving nothing in return. With steady hands, I navigated to my banking app and initiated a transfer to move the $8,000 I had set aside for the final payment back into my primary account. Then I returned to the booking site and canceled the reservation. The cancellation policy meant I would lose the deposit, but the remaining balance would be refunded. I drafted a brief email to my father. Richard, the chalet reservation has been canceled. Since you and Amanda have made other plans, I've made adjustments accordingly. I hope you enjoy the Caribbean. Douglas. No accusations, no emotional appeals, just facts. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I placed my phone in my desk drawer, switched it to silent, and walked away from it. For the first time in years, I wasn't anxiously awaiting my father's response or planning my next attempt to connect with him. Instead, I called Jason. "What are you doing for Christmas?" I asked, when he answered. "Family stuff at my parents' place in Denver." "Why, please tell me you're not still going to that chalet alone." "No, I canceled it. I was wondering, would it be weird if I joined your family celebration? I know it's last minute." Jason cut me off. "Are you kidding? My mom has been asking for years when I'm finally going to bring you home for Christmas. She's convinced we're secretly dating and I'm just not ready to tell them." I laughed, the sound surprising me after the emotional turbulence of the past 24 hours. "I don't want to intrude on family time. Doug, to my parents you're already family. The number of times I've talked about you over the years, they know everything from your coffee preference to your weird habit of alphabetizing your spice rack." "It's not weird, it's efficient," I protested automatically. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, buddy. But seriously, you're coming to Denver. No discussion." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Jason's mother, Linda. He must have texted her immediately after our conversation. Douglas. Linda's warm voice filled the line. "Jason tells me you might join us for Christmas. Please say yes. We have the guest room all ready, and I need someone to help me gang up on the boys during game night." Her enthusiasm was so genuine, so different from the forced interactions with my father, that I found myself agreeing before I had fully processed the invitation. After hanging up, I realized I still had nearly a week before I needed to be in Denver. The thought of sitting alone in my apartment, ruminating on the situation with my father, held no appeal. On impulse, I opened my laptop again and searched for last-minute travel deals. A wellness retreat in Hawaii caught my eye. 5 days of yoga, meditation, hiking, and healthy meals. The timing was perfect. I could fly to Hawaii the next day, spend 5 days focusing on my mental and physical health, then catch a direct flight to Denver to join Jason's family for Christmas. I booked the retreat and a first-class ticket to Maui, then arranged for the Denver flight. For the first time in months, I felt like I was choosing myself rather than chasing someone else's approval. That evening I packed with methodical efficiency, lightweight clothes for Hawaii, warmer options for Denver, thoughtful gifts for Jason's family that I had fortunately purchased earlier in the month. As I zipped my suitcase closed, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. Before heading to bed, I briefly checked my phone. 5 missed calls from my father. I ignored them, set up an automated vacation response for my email, and went to sleep without reading any of the messages. The next morning, I boarded my flight to Hawaii with a curious sense of freedom. As the plane took off, I gazed out at the San Francisco skyline receding below and realized I was not just traveling away from home, but away from a pattern that had held me captive for too long. The wellness retreat in Hawaii was exactly what I needed. For the first 2 days, I immersed myself completely in the experience, silencing notifications and focusing solely on the present moment. Mornings began with sunrise yoga on the beach, followed by nutritious breakfasts featuring local fruits I had never tried before. Afternoons included guided hikes to hidden waterfalls, meditation sessions in bamboo groves, and informative workshops on everything from stress management to traditional Hawaiian healing practices. I met interesting people from around the world. A novelist from Japan working through writer's block. A recently divorced teacher from Minnesota, reclaiming her identity. A retired surgeon from Germany, fulfilling a lifelong dream to pling-rouse, learn surfing. Our conversations stayed present-focused, a refreshing change from my usual tendency to dwell on past disappointments or future anxieties. By the third day, I felt relaxed enough to check my phone. What I found was digital chaos: 31 missed calls, 17 voicemails, and 23 text messages, primarily from my father. The voicemails told a story of escalating frustration. The first left, shortly after I sent the cancellation, "Email Douglas, what is this about? Call me back immediately." 2 hours later, I just got an email confirmation about the cancellation. "Are you playing some kind of childish game? Call me." The next morning, "Do you have any idea how embarrassed I am? I had already told friends about this place. Fix this now." That afternoon, "This is completely unacceptable behavior. There will be consequences for this stunt, Douglas." The messages continued growing increasingly hostile. "You've ruined Christmas for Amanda and me. Is that what you wanted? This is why your mother and I had such problems with you as a child. Always so dramatic. I've spent years trying to rebuild our relationship, and this is how you repay my efforts." The revisionist history was almost comical. In what universe had he spent years trying to rebuild our relationship? The final voicemail left at 3:17 a.m. My time took a different tone. "Look, maybe I didn't explain the situation clearly. Amanda's ex is really important in the business community here. This could be a big opportunity for me. I'm sure you understand. Call me back." The text messages followed a similar pattern, starting with demands and accusations, then evolving into attempts at manipulation through guilt. There was also an email from Amanda, surprisingly thoughtful compared to my father's communications. "Douglas, I feel terrible about this situation. I want you to know that your father told me you had agreed to change plans and that you were even going to help pay for our Caribbean trip as a Christmas gift to us. I only learned the truth when I overheard him arguing with you on the phone. I'm truly sorry. This isn't how family should treat each other." The revelation that my father had not only abandoned our plans but had actually told Amanda I would finance their alternative vacation left me momentarily speechless. The audacity was almost impressive. My first instinct was to respond immediately, to call my father and finally say all the things I had been holding back for years. But the peace I had found in Hawaii was too precious to sacrifice for what would inevitably be an unproductive conversation. Instead, I walked down to the beach, watching the powerful Pacific waves crash against the shore. The constancy of their rhythm was soothing, a reminder that some things continued regardless of human drama. That evening, I scheduled a video call with Dr. Melissa, sharing the developments and seeking guidance on how to proceed. "What's your goal here, Douglas?" she asked after listening to my update. "When you imagine the best possible outcome of this situation, what does that look like?" I considered her question carefully. "I think I've been chasing a fantasy. The idea that if I just found the right approach, my father would transform into the dad I always wanted. That's never going to happen. So what would a realistic best outcome look like? Honestly, learning to be okay without his approval or validation, setting boundaries that protect me from continued disappointment, maybe eventually having a limited relationship based on who he actually is, not who I wish he was." Dr. Melissa nodded. "Those sound like healthy goals. How do you want to respond to his messages? I don't think I do. At least not yet. Nothing I say right now will be heard the way I intend it. We agreed that I would respond only to Amanda's email with a brief acknowledgement. Amanda, thank you for your note. I appreciate your honesty about the situation. I hope you both enjoy your holiday. No accusations, no emotional processing, just acknowledgement and closure. After our call, I returned to the retreat activities with renewed focus, allowing myself to be fully present rather than ruminating on the situation back home. The next day brought another voicemail from my father. This one so absurd it actually made me laugh out loud, while listening to it on my lanai overlooking the ocean. Douglas, I've been thinking about what happened. The truth is, I was testing you. I wanted to see how committed you were to our relationship. A truly devoted son would have understood the importance of this yacht opportunity and supported my decision. I'm disappointed that you chose to react so childishly by canceling everything. When you're ready to apologize, you know where to reach me. The mental gymnastics required to position himself as the victim in this scenario were truly Olympic level. For the first time, I could see the manipulation clearly for what it was without the emotional fog that had clouded my judgment for so long. I texted Jason, Dad just claimed he was testing my commitment by bailing on Christmas. Apparently I failed by not enthusiastically financing his Caribbean vacation with Amanda. Is it wrong that I'm actually laughing about this? Jason's response came quickly. The man deserves an Olympic gold medal in narcissistic bull. I'm glad you're laughing instead of beating yourself up. That's progress. He was right. A week ago, I would have analyzed this message for any hint of genuine feeling, looking for a way to interpret it that allowed me to maintain hope for our relationship. Now I could see it for the manipulative tactic it was. The freedom that came with this recognition was exhilarating. I no longer felt responsible for managing my father's emotions or earning his approval. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was prioritizing my own well-being without guilt. The final days of my retreat passed in a blur of peaceful activities. I participated in a traditional Hawaiian blessing ceremony, learned basic surfing skills, and spent one entire day in silence as part of a mindfulness practice. By the time I packed to leave for Denver, I felt centered in a way I hadn't experienced before. As my flight took off from Maui, I looked down at the paradise I was leaving with gratitude rather than regret. The island had given me space to break a pattern that had been holding me back for decades. Now I was headed toward something I had never fully experienced, a genuine family Christmas. The Denver airport was decked in holiday finery Christmas music, playing through the speakers as I navigated through crowds of travelers. Jason waited beyond security, holding a ridiculously large sign reading, "Welcome Douglas, honorary Miller family member, since 2011. Was that really necessary, I asked, unable to suppress my grin as I approached. Absolutely. Mom's orders. She wanted you to feel properly welcomed. He grabbed my bag before I could protest. Cars this way. Everyone's excited to meet the man behind all my college survival stories. The drive to his family home in the suburbs took about 40 minutes, Jason filling the time with updates about his parents, his two younger brothers, and the assorted aunts, uncles, and cousins who would be rotating through the house over the next few days. The Miller family home was exactly as I had pictured from Jason's descriptions. A large, comfortable colonial with a wraparound porch currently adorned with tasteful holiday decorations. Before we even reached the front door, it swung open to reveal Linda Miller, a petite woman with Jason's same warm smile and energetic presence. Douglas. Finally, she engulfed me in a hug that seemed impossible from someone her size. We've set up the blue guest room for you. It has the best mattress and its own bathroom. Robert's making his famous hot chocolate and dinner will be ready in an hour. Come in, come in. Any awkwardness I feared about inserting myself into a family holiday evaporated under Linda's genuine welcome. Robert Miller, a tall man with kind eyes and a quiet demeanor, emerged from the kitchen to shake my hand and offer a mug of the promised hot chocolate, complete with homemade whipped cream and a cinnamon stick. Jason's brothers, Tyler 28 and Mark 25, arrived shortly after, both immediately treating me like a long-known friend rather than a stranger intruding on their family celebration. Within hours, I found myself drafted into their traditional Christmas Eve activities, helping Linda decorate sugar cookies, while Robert played Christmas classics on the piano in the living room. "Jason tells me you had a rough start to the holiday season," Linda said quietly, as we worked side by side, carefully applying colored icing to bell-shaped cookies. "That's one way to put it," I admitted. "Well, his loss is our gain," she said simply. "We're happy you're here, Douglas." That evening, the family tradition involved a competitive game of charades, followed by a marathon viewing of classic Christmas movies. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, the weight of disappointment temporarily lifted from my shoulders. Christmas Eve service at the Millers' local church was a new experience for me. The candlelit sanctuary, the familiar carols sung by hundreds of voices in unison, the sense of community and tradition. It was moving in a way I hadn't anticipated. I wasn't particularly religious, but the message of hope and new beginnings resonated deeply. Christmas morning arrived with the excited shouts of Tyler's 6-year-old son Tommy, who had arrived late the previous night with his mother. The boy took an immediate liking to me, especially after discovering I made computer games, a massive simplification of my actual job, but one I was happy to embrace for his benefit. "Uncle Doug, can you show me how?" Tommy asked, proudly displaying the new tablet he had received from his grandparents. "Uncle Doug?" I questioned, raising an eyebrow at Jason, who shrugged innocently. "I might have mentioned you were like another brother to me," he explained. Tommy took that literally. For the next hour, I sat with Tommy, showing him a simple coding app designed for children. His excitement when he successfully programmed a character to move across the screen was contagious, his high five nearly knocking me over. The gift exchange that followed brought an unexpected lump to my throat. The Millers had prepared gifts for me, thoughtful items that showed they had paid attention to Jason's stories about me over the years. A high-end coffee grinder from Robert and Linda, because Jason said you're particular about your coffee. A vintage tech company t-shirt from Tyler that he had found at a thrift store. A handmade scarf from Mark's girlfriend, who had apparently been knitting presents since September. I was grateful for my foresight in bringing gifts for everyone, including Tommy, who was delighted with the coding robot I had purchased on a whim weeks earlier. The most surprising moment came when Linda insisted I join them for the annual family photo in front of the Christmas tree. "But it's your family picture," I protested weakly. "And you're here with our family," she replied firmly. "That's good enough for me." Christmas dinner was a feast that had clearly taken days to prepare. As we gathered around the table, Robert asked if I would mind if they said grace. "Of course not," I replied. He nodded, then added unexpectedly, "Would you do us the honor, Douglas?" Surprised, I hesitated only briefly before finding simple words of gratitude. For the food, for the welcome I had received, for the reminder of what family could and should be. As the meal progressed, conversation flowed easily from topic to topic. Gradually, I found myself opening up about my situation with my father, sharing more than I had initially intended. There was no judgment in their responses, only understanding and occasional righteous indignation on my behalf. "Family isn't always who you're born to," Linda said when I finished. "Sometimes it's who you choose and who chooses you back. That's just as real and just as important." Robert nodded in agreement. "My own father was similar in many ways to how you've described Richard. It took me years to stop chasing his approval and realize I wasn't the problem. Their validation was healing, in a way I hadn't expected. For so long I had carried a sense of deficiency, that if I were somehow better, more successful, more understanding, my father would want a relationship with me. Hearing that others had experienced similar situations helped me see that the failure wasn't mine. As we were clearing dishes, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael, a college friend who lived in Denver whom I hadn't seen in years, in town visiting family. "Heard from Jason. You're here too. Free for a quick hello." With the Millers' enthusiastic encouragement, I invited him to join us for dessert. When he arrived an hour later, he was immediately absorbed into the family gathering, another stray welcomed without question. During dessert, my phone lit up with yet another call from my father. For the first time, I felt no anxiety seeing his name on my screen, no compulsion to answer immediately. I silenced the call and returned to the conversation at hand, a discussion about Tyler's upcoming house renovation. After dinner, while the others were setting up a board game, Michael pulled me aside. "You seem different," he observed. "More at ease than I remember." "It's been an enlightening couple of weeks," I replied. "Good enlightening. Painful but necessary," I admitted. "I'm learning to let go of expectations that were never going to be met." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "That's the hardest kind of growth, but usually the most important." Later that night, after Michael had left, and the younger members of the family had gone to bed, Jason and I sat on the back porch with beers in hand, watching the occasional snowflake drift down from the night sky. "Thank you," I said simply. "For what?" "For sharing your family with me. For being right about my father all along but never saying, 'I told you so.' For everything, really." Jason clinked his bottle against mine. "That's what family does, Doug." As I went to sleep that night in the comfortable guest room, my father's latest text, "We need to talk," remained unanswered. For the first time in my adult life, I fell asleep on Christmas without a knot of unmet expectations in my chest. The message could wait. I was exactly where I needed to be. Returning to San Francisco after the holidays felt different. My apartment, once just a place to sleep between workdays, now seemed like a sanctuary. A space that was entirely mine, reflecting my tastes and priorities rather than serving as a showcase to impress others. I approached the new year with a clarity I had previously lacked. After 2 weeks of ignoring my father's increasingly demanding messages, I decided it was time to address the situation directly, not from a place of hurt or anger, but from a position of newfound strength. I suggested meeting at a neutral coffee shop near his workplace in Los Angeles during my next business trip. He agreed immediately, likely believing this meant a return to our previous dynamic. The cafe I chose was busy enough to discourage dramatic scenes, but quiet enough for conversation. I arrived early, selecting a table with clear sightlines to the door. When my father walked in 15 minutes late, I observed him with fresh eyes. The carefully casual designer clothes, the expensive watch, the practiced charm as he greeted the barista. All the trappings of success, without the substance behind it. He sat down with a rehearsed, apologetic expression. "Douglas, I'm glad we're doing this. The holidays got a bit messy, but I've been thinking a lot about our relationship." I nodded, allowing him to continue. "I may have been hasty in changing our Christmas plans. The yacht trip wasn't what I expected. Amanda and I actually had a big fight there. We're not together anymore." This revelation was clearly meant to elicit sympathy, perhaps even satisfaction that the relationship that had stolen him from our Christmas plans had imploded. Instead, I felt nothing beyond mild curiosity. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it, but not in the way he intended. "Well, these things happen, but it made me realize what's really important: family." He reached across the table as if to pat my hand, but I subtly shifted, causing him to miss and awkwardly retract the gesture. "I was thinking we could plan something for spring break. Maybe that fishing trip I always promised you as a kid." There it was, the pivot back to me providing experiences he wanted framed as making up for past failures. The pattern was so obvious now that I could hardly believe I had missed it for so long. "Dad," I said, the word feeling strange in my mouth after weeks of thinking of him as Richard. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too. I need to be honest with you about where I stand." His expression shifted wariness, replacing the practiced contrition. "I've spent most of my life trying to build a relationship with you. I've initiated contact-planned visits, paid for meals and trips, overlooked broken promises and last-minute cancellations. I've made excuses for behavior that hurt me, telling myself that if I just tried harder, was more successful, more understanding, more generous, you would finally want to be my father." He started to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "Please let me finish. This isn't about blame, it's about clarity. I'm not angry anymore, but I am done chasing your approval. If you want a relationship with me, you'll need to demonstrate that through your actions, not just when you need something or when your other plans fall through." "That's not fair," he protested. "I've made efforts too. Who reached out to you after all those years? Me. Who suggested we reconnect? Me. You contacted me after seeing my career success on social media," I corrected gently. "Since then, I've been the one maintaining the connection, making all the plans, covering all the expenses." "So what now? You're keeping score?" "That's very small-minded, Douglas. I thought I raised you better than that." The irony of him claiming credit for raising me when he had been absent for most of my childhood might have wounded me once. Now it only confirmed that I was making the right decision. I'm not keeping score. I'm setting boundaries. Going forward, I'm open to a relationship, but it needs to be mutual. I suggest we start small. Maybe monthly dinners if you're serious about building something real. His expressions cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally calculation. Of course I'm serious. You're my son. Family is everything to me. I hope that's true, I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting his claim. The dinner offer stands. You choose the date next month, let me know, and we'll go from there. He seemed unsure how to respond to this new dynamic. His usual tactics, guilt charm, vague promises, had failed to move me back into the compliant role he expected. Fine, he finally said. I'll check my calendar and let you know. As we parted ways outside the cafe, I felt neither triumph nor sadness, just a quiet certainty that I had done what was necessary for my own well-being. In my next session with Dr. Melissa, I described the interaction in detail. How did it feel to maintain your boundaries? She asked. Strangely easy, I admitted. Once I stopped needing his approval, his usual tactics lost their power. That's often how it works, she nodded. The strongest boundaries come when we're clear about our own worth, rather than seeking validation from those who've proven unable to provide it. The following weeks brought subtle but significant changes to my life. I deepened friendships with colleagues I'd previously kept at a professional distance. I joined a local hiking group, connecting with people who shared my interest in outdoor activities. I established a weekly video call with Jason's family, particularly Tommy, who was eager to show me his progress with coding. Richard missed our first scheduled dinner, texting an hour after the agreed time with a vague excuse about work complications. I simply replied, "No problem. Let me know when you'd like to reschedule," and enjoyed a pleasant solo meal at the restaurant I had chosen. He appeared for the second scheduled dinner a month later, bringing a small gift, a tie clip that seemed hastily purchased from the department store across the street. The gesture was awkward but represented more effort than he had made in years. Our conversation remained somewhat stilted, but for the first time he asked questions about my work that showed at least a surface-level interest in understanding what I actually did. When the check came, he insisted on paying, though I noticed him wince slightly at the total. These small signs might once have filled me with hope for a transformed relationship. Now I accepted them for what they were. Minimal efforts from someone with limited capacity for genuine connection. I would take what he could give, without expecting more than he was capable of providing. Spring brought an invitation to join Jason's family for their annual trip to the Grand Canyon. I accepted without hesitation, allocating vacation days I would once have saved in case my father suddenly wanted to spend time together. A week before the trip, Tommy's birthday party invitation arrived. A personalized video message from the 6-year-old, solemnly informing me that my presence was required at his dinosaur-themed celebration. I booked flights, immediately absurdly touched at being included in this family milestone. Michael, my college friend from Denver, had relocated to San Francisco for a new job opportunity. Our casual coffee catch-up evolved into regular dinners, then into something more. Our first official date, a sunset sail on the bay, revealed a connection that had always been there but never explored. As spring turned to summer, I found myself building a life rich with meaningful connections. My relationship with Michael deepened, bringing a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine interest in each other's lives. My friendship with Jason remained a cornerstone of my support system, now expanded to include his entire family. My work took on new meaning as I mentored younger team members, finding satisfaction in helping others develop their potential. My father continued to make sporadic efforts at connection, sometimes showing up for planned dinners, sometimes canceling at the last minute. I accepted each interaction for what it was, neither cutting him off entirely nor expecting more than he could give. During a weekend hike with Michael overlooking the Pacific Ocean, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. "Do you still get sad about your dad?" Michael asked, intuitive as always. Sometimes, I admitted. Not for what I lost, because you can't lose what you never had. I get sad thinking about what could have been. But that's different from thinking something's wrong with me, because he couldn't be what I needed. That's a big distinction, Michael observed. It took me a long time to get there, I said. I spent years believing that if I just found the right approach, he would suddenly transform into the father I wanted. Now I understand that while he may never be that person, I can still be whole. The revelation that had begun on that painful December evening when my father disinvited me from Christmas had crystallized into a life philosophy. I could leave the door open for those who had hurt me without chasing them through it. I could offer chances for reconciliation without making my happiness dependent on their choices. As I enter this new chapter of my life, I carry a profound gratitude for the painful Christmas that ultimately led to genuine healing. The holiday that I thought would destroy me instead freed me to build the life and relationships I truly deserved. So let me ask you, have you ever had to let go of expectations that were holding you back? Has a painful rejection ever led you to something better? Drop your stories in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to build connections with those who truly value you.